If you only knew the power of one, the power of two, the power of many.
The Star Wars fandom has really turned into a battleground since The Acolyte premiered. We're halfway through the show. Things are going horribly for Star Wars and Lucasfilm Limited. The show is rating right now with the audience score of 13%. And here's the main reason why, and many of you are going to disagree with this, but I'm going to tell you the main reason why this show is such a debacle is because it doesn't feel like Star Wars at all. Hey everybody, thank you for being here at Echo Base Network today. Today's video is brought to you by the original 1978 Blue Snaggletooth, ladies and gentlemen. If you know, you know, because I've been a Star Wars fan for over 4 decades, my entire life. It's the greatest franchise ever made, and it's being destroyed by Disney because they're giving us garbage like The Acolyte. There's so much better things that you could go and watch right now that's not Star Wars because they do not know what to do with the company. They do not know how to make good Star Wars for the fandom, and now the media is starting to catch on. Over at Slate.com, Star Wars has lost its sense of spectacle. Star Wars has lost its sense of spectacle. The Acolyte is yet another example of how flat the franchise has become. And I got to tell you guys, this article is spot on. Star Wars is no longer Star Wars. It's Star Wars in name only. That's it. Just look at this opening paragraph. In 2024, Star Wars is increasingly hard to define. Is it a space opera, a sci-fi western, a detective show in space? As illustrated by Disney Plus's never-ending mill of Star Wars content, most recently The Acolyte, a new series starring Squid Game star Lee Jung-jae, George Lucas's anti-imperialistic sci-fi epic, has now become nebulous, less a recognizable world than a series of IP extensions. The Acolyte, like many of the past 5 years' additions to the franchise, attempts to diversify the narrative scope of the vast Star Wars universe, depicting a mystery-come revenge story in space. But the result is lackluster, not least because the series and others like it fails to capture the franchise's magic on the small screen. The author of the article talks about seeing X-Wings on screen watching the original movie. He talks about even the prequels, the battle between Obi-Wan Kenobi and his former Padawan Anakin Skywalker turned Darth Vader. You know, things that feel like Star Wars. The article also goes on to talk about how forgettable things are. How everything that they're producing has no rewatchability for the fandom. He says that he can't even recall what happened in the Book of Boba Fett, what happened in Ahsoka, what happened in Kenobi. And that's how most of the fandom feels. And you know the whole thing about the Acolyte trying to say that there is no good, there is no bad, they're blurring the lines in the whole binary good versus evil thing? Well, the article also hits on that as well. The Acolyte pushes back against the binary of good versus evil that defines so much of Star Wars, even if it falls short of making that truly narrative compelling. That's one of the things about the original Star Wars. Good and evil were clearly defined, and it was fun. This, not so much. George Lucas said that Star Wars was made for children, young boys, and their fathers. The Acolyte is not. I mean, let's just get real. The Acolyte is about a lesbian coven of witches and 2 people who survived it. That's what the entire show is about. It doesn't feel like Star Wars, and that's exactly why they get this 13%. Now, because they get this 13%, and there's an 85% critical score contrast, guys, this is very simple. Let me end this debate for many people right now. Most of you guys watching this video already know this. The reason the critics have this scored as an 85%, there are 2 reasons why. One reason, because they're shills and they're going to praise anything Disney comes out with. The second reason why is because they're not Star Wars fans. If you are a Star Wars fan, odds are you're going to be right here in the 13% because what we're watching, again, is garbage. It doesn't resemble Star Wars in any way. But don't tell Forbes that. Forbes comes out, the low score has been attributed to unjustified review bombing, with the key evidence being the fact that the show's Rotten Tomatoes critic score stands at a respectable 15%. That's not evidence. That's evidence to suggest exactly what I just told you. They're shills or they're not Star Wars fans. The end. I also just want to throw this in there too. If you are a Star Wars fan, if you've loved it as long as I have, or you grew up with it in the prequels, or you're Gen Z or whatever, if you like Star Wars and you're a fan of this show, truly are a fan of this show, then I'm happy for you. But for the most of us, nah. From the Force to farce, Disney's The Acolyte descends into self-parody. Ironically, we just got the news that Spaceballs 2 is coming out. We don't even need a Spaceballs 2 because we're getting a great parody of Star Wars right now with The Acolyte. And it's kind of funny. The power of many. The Washington Examiner goes into the details about the plot, and then they say, however, despite the potential such a brooding premise offers, talking about a dark side story, a mystery, Jedi are being killed, it sounds fantastic. They say the resulting series is instead an unwatchable conduit of political posturing. It presents an incoherent plot driven by clumsy and cartoonish dialogue. LGBT activist Headland, when asked in an interview if Acolyte was the gayest installment of the franchise, she responded with, "I think that Star Wars is so gay already." Rife with its novice cast of copy-pasted strong female protagonist in a lesbian space witch commune, Acolyte borders on self-parody. And if you get quiet and listen, you could hear the shills shrieking around the galaxy right now. But the show definitely has its staunch defenders, as mentioned in Forbes. Senior writer Paul Tassi doubles down yet again. In 3 weeks, The Acolyte has more audience reviews than 3 seasons of The Mandalorian, and the whole premise of his take here is that because there's so many reviews for The Acolyte and not even The Mandalorian, it has to be bad, right? Look at how he begins this article that just came out. You may not like The Acolyte, but don't look me in the eye and tell me it's not being review bombed to hell and back. It's not being review bombed to hell and back. He goes on to say, this hate is not just about low numbers, it's about racism, misogyny, and overall harassment of the cast, which has poisoned every conversation about this show and exemplifies every horrible impulse of these so-called fans over this entire Disney era. You can like or not like things, sure, but this is different level and is getting more and more inexcusable as time goes on. Well, I agree that it's getting more and more inexcusable, the fact that Disney is making this garbage and stamping the name Star Wars on it, because it's not Star Wars, as I already said. It's Star Wars in name only. Paul Tassi can come out and defend whatever he wants to. Where are the receipts? Where are all the racist comments? Where are all the misogynistic comments? No, dude. The show is hot garbage. It's the characters, it's the plot, it's the story, it's the dialogue, it's the LGBTQ, it's the DEI, it's all of it. You mix all that stuff in a pot, and what do you get? The worst Star Wars of all time. I'm all about diversity. I'm all about equal opportunity, but the best person for the job should get the job. And when Kathleen Kennedy looked Leslye Headland in the eye, probably with love, and said, "You've made a Star Wars story, Leslye, but now go make a Leslye Headland story," this is what we get. And there's been a lot of scuttlebutt here about the whole Ki Adi Mundi, the birth date being changed and all that stuff. Look, that is small potatoes, honestly. I know. People who are like all about the lore and this is a created world. George created that character. They changed it. It's nonsensical. I understand your argument, but here's what the proponents of Disney Star Wars are saying in response now, which is actually really funny. Ki Adi Mundi's age broke canon. He was originally said to be this age in a book from the 90s. And then they say, did you know on the original Topps Empire Strikes Back trading cards, it says Luke and Leia are literally 2 years apart. Age hasn't always been accurate or what you thought it was. Think about how dumb that comment is. First of all, when that card was made, nobody knew they were twins. And if they actually had the exact same date of birth on the back of this card prior to the movie's release, Don't you think people would have recognized or realized that they were brother and sister? Hell, George Lucas didn't even know they were brother and sister until after this movie, leading up to Return of the Jedi. That's when he made this happen. We know that George, brilliantly by the way, created a lot of this in the air. The story changed and adapted and evolved over time, and I'm okay with that. But don't use something that happened with Star Wars in the very beginning to justify a canonical break at this point, when the series has been around for damn near 50 years. That's inexcusable. Nice try, but you fail. And in the latest news, Leslye Headland is now lashing out at the fandom and in the media, saying that if you only see this as a lesbian story, that's reductive to the story. You don't understand what you're watching, and just like she told us before, you're not a Star Wars fan. Well, look at some of the things that Leslye Headland has said about agenda leading up to this show and after its premiere. Queer representation is incredibly important to me. It's vital that queer people see themselves reflected on screen in a way that feels authentic and true to their experiences. Yeah, because George Lucas did that. When I create queer characters, I draw from my own life and relationships. Authenticity in storytelling comes from personal truth, and I strive to bring that to every project I work on. So does that mean we're going to get a little Harvey Weinstein action in Star Wars? I'm interested in portraying queer characters as complex, multifaceted individuals. It's about moving beyond stereotypes and showing the richness and diversity of queer lives. No, that's not what Star Wars should be about. Being a queer woman, my identity naturally informs my work. I want to create stories where queerness is a part of the character's identity, not their defining trait. How about now? With The Acolyte, I'm excited to bring diverse and inclusive narratives to the Star Wars universe. It's a chance to explore themes of identity and queerness in a new and expansive world. The reason why there's so much fallout with Star Wars right now is because of the story that they're telling us, because of the product that they're giving the fans. Once again, Star Wars in name only, and fans like me, longtime fans like us, we're not buying this crap. This is garbage, and we got to call them out for it. The reason why there are so many reviews is because fans are unhappy and they're lashing out and they're speaking out. You know what happens when a show delivers a great show? There aren't a lot of positive comments about it. There aren't a lot of positive reviews from the audience about it because people are happy. They're just literally content. But when you get angry, you get motivated to speak up and say something. That's what's happening. It's an incredible phenomenon happening in Star Wars right now. If they continue to give us Star Wars of like this, I will watch it burn to the ground, and we will celebrate that. We will celebrate that, the death of this franchise. And here's the great thing. They can never touch George Lucas' Star Wars. We always have it, and you can't do nothing about it, Disney. Thanks for being here. Let me know in the comments what you think. Things are getting crazy. What we have to look forward to, Leslye Headland's favorite episode of The Acolyte is tomorrow night's episode. Can't wait for that. We are your Echo Base Network. May the Force be with you. See you on the next one.